Hi, Val.
What is up?
I am in a Nature Valley bar, the ones that are like so crumbly.
I just finished a protein bar. I should have kept it. If you're watching this right now, go get a snack bar. Welcome to the show. Who are you? Tell me a little bit about yourself and then say how do we know each other?
So I'm Katie Blair, and I know Belle through going to college together, and we were in choir. We sang alongside each other, and I also knew her through a leadership program that
Right.
Gonzaga offers. And
I was thinking if Tim Westerhouse could see us now.
yep,
He was
yeah,
our choir
he's a
director.
great man. I miss him. Cheers, Tim.
If you're watching this, we
Hats
miss
off.
you.
We miss you. Yeah, so a little bit about me is that I really like to just embody productivity by my day to day. And I also feel like I'm a social butterfly.
Hmm.
So I would say, like, those are two statements that basically what you get when you have a first interaction with me.
For the rest of the audience, I invited Katie to come on the show. She has this really beautiful inner ambition. I thought that it'd be great to have that be on the show. And now we're here.
Now we're here.
I asked you to prepare just kind of a story or two. What kind of came up for you?
So, regarding ambition, I would say that there are a couple elements that kind of dictate where ambition, in my opinion, typically goes, like later on in your life. And the first part is kind of the familial sense. The familial sense is one that I particularly had when I was little. My dad was a D1 collegiate athlete, my mom was a really prominent soprano, and my sister is taking on so many international adventures that it's kind of hard to keep up with her. And I think those factors of the immediate family mixed with the schools that I went to, there's a sense of privilege in that upbringing of being at some of the best schools and like also having the socioeconomic status to be able to complete all my homework and not have to like work a job. And that's why I don't take my education for granted, like at all. And my education has ultimately fulfilled and continues to fulfill my ambition and fuel it. So that's kind of where that stems from me.
One thing you talked about, like the privilege that is education, that's something we don't necessarily have control over when we're younger.
Yeah, I think I'm incredibly blessed to be able to have that ambition in the first place. My education comes first, and so I'm trying to have two graduate degrees by the time I'm 30, 32, and so that is my priority for now. At least getting one out of the way. And so yeah, and my sister is also very rooted in those values as well to try and use the privilege we have to like first establish ourselves and then really go and make a difference in whatever we pursue.
Yeah. Something that I really love about you, and this has always been the case with you, you are really honest about where you come from and what barriers may or may not have been in your way in
Right.
relation to people. This idea of coming from generational wealth, but
Hmm.
doing it in service to other people. Like
Hmm.
you talked about, like, how can I use this to like better the world?
Yeah, I think the privilege element of it is establishing ourselves as educated, passionate people. I don't think I've touched the iceberg of what I want to pursue.
I know that we still are going to be talking about high school and college. So, why don't we kind of go there before I dig into some of the other questions that I have?
Yeah, absolutely. High school for me is something I look back on and cringe.
Ooh.
I think I really tried to pursue like party culture and like being crazy and just really feeding into substances that I shouldn't have been having at that time. And it really gave me this brutal image of self worth and like what I needed to act like in order to fit the mold of like a party culture person or someone who everyone wants around. And so with that came like this intense level of lying to myself and others. And the consequences were not apparent until it came to one point during my senior year.
Mhm.
And my parents ultimately found out about all the things that I was doing and lying to them about. And it was a really tough situation because I felt really angry that they found out and angry at myself for putting myself in that position and angry that I was like using my friends to do some of these activities. And I went into college kind of having that same mentality of like, my parents got me in trouble, time to be in college and go wild. And I did. And I did. And freshman year, I mean, for everyone, it's just a wild time. But um, I kind of established this reputation of like, do everything, try everything, be everywhere, go everywhere.
Okay, something that I'm kind of tracking like through high school and college that I've experienced too is when you are an ambitious, high achieving social person, you can get away with so much lying to yourself. Like you can get away with putting so much on your plate. That sounds like it's been your experience, right? At least in those few years.
Absolutely. My senior year, I pushed myself to the brim,
Mm.
so much so that I developed health issues. To be honest, since then, it's kind of just like slowly peeling back the layers of that initial problem of why I'm going so hard all the time, always working, always like trying to see different groups of people and like balance everything. And it's just not realistic to deal with, right?
Right.
Like, I have to be really careful about that. And anyone who knows me is like, oh my gosh, I recognize that in Katie.
Like, of course, as your friend, I know you as like Katie who is funny, Katie who is loving, Katie who's a brilliant singer and brings people together and makes people feel included. But when you are ambitious, that can often be misunderstood by both you in putting your worth in things on a calendar, or it can be misunderstood by others as like that's your main character trait. Can you talk a little bit more about where today you are finding parts of your identity outside this strong character trait that you have?
I think it ultimately has this giant branch of my health being in pretty serious decline, but trying to find parts of my identity in myself that are not blaring at everyone in all directions at all times is a really difficult thing to do because you have to go inside of your head and try and establish what makes you feel comfortable and when you need to be pushed out of that comfort. I don't have like all the answers on that yet. You can come back to me on that question
And we
down
will
the
circle
road.
back in a few years.
Hmm.
Yep.
And so I think that it's a work in progress, but I really want to have an effect on something. I don't want to just live and pay taxes and die, right? And everyone has that kind of aspiration of trying to leave their mark on the earth, and I don't think it has to fit a certain mold for how you leave that mark. You're not going to reach this mark and be satiated, satisfied. Like
All
you
good. I've done it now.
yeah, you're not gonna ever hit that point. And so having like those smaller victories along the way to just being the best person you can be and living a life fulfilled. I'm trying desperately to kind of fit into that truth of like having those small victories, but also not having this all or nothing thinking when I try to pursue a new goal that might be a little bit higher.
Mhm.
And as I said before, giving myself grace if it's not like on my timeline or in my planner. I'm very meticulous with my schedule on a day-to-day basis, and I think a lot of self-worth is in kind of those written down, um, structured things.
Yeah.
So
I think something that's so powerful to me that you just said is it is a work in progress. I think that seeing oneself as a work in progress rather than measuring up all of the things you're not is a great place to start, as far as finding worth from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
I love that saying. I'm so glad you said that, because
Good.
I'm so curious about your experience as a woman who is ambitious, and if there's any sort of barriers you've hit. Where have been some tensions for you in that?
I think the first part of being an ambitious woman is the comparison game of like, oh my gosh, she's more ambitious than me, is getting more stuff done than me. And there's kind of that juxtaposition of just pitting women against each other. And I think that's the closest that I can come to like experiencing conflict within trying to be an ambitious woman. As a woman, my overall purpose, I want it to be for the betterment of women. I don't want it to be stagnant and flat and completely indulgent, because that's kind of how I've lived my life in the past. And it's not fulfilling.
I am so struck by you talking about the comparison game.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember at Gonzaga, we were both in the comprehensive leadership program. And even in Gonzaga as a whole, being surrounded by people who were accomplishing these incredible things, or were just really cool, and had a lot going on, and were really passionate, or particularly attractive, or
Yeah.
like it's that comparison game, especially among women. I mean, for me it was so strong in those years. And well, I read this quote: another woman's accomplishment is not your failure.
Exactly.
And I tell myself that probably 10 times a week. Like, another woman's accomplishment is an accomplishment for all women.
Exactly.
Especially if that woman is doing it to, further things for all of us, to pull others up with her, and
Exactly.
that changed, that saying totally changed my
I
perspective.
think that's a great quote. I think that's a great quote. And I think also for me, this just popped into my head, the level of comparison I felt in the past like 6 months or more has not affected me, because I've quit a lot of social media platforms.
Yeah.
The action of trying to get TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, trying to integrate, like shift those out, transition those out of my life, I think has only done wonders. And I mean, I'm not perfect. I slip every once in a while and kind of have that comparative thinking. But I kind of have shifted that thinking, or that immediate reaction, to okay, then why can't you do that?
Wow. I didn't know that you had started kind of divesting from social media. That's really impressive. Are there any other, I think, stories that you wanted to tell?
I think one last piece of it's not advice, just last statement. My conclusion. As much of a Pinterest saying it is, like, loving fiercely and loving wholly and holistically leads to ambition. So that can be in the form of mentorship, loving someone's work deeply and their growth for their professional career, or that is in need right now. Just like displaying that and not having that left in the dust or swept under the rug.
Something that I hear too is your ambition is one that comes from loving fiercely. You remind all of us here on the Growing Show that in a world of hustle culture, in a world of what can you produce, there is a necessary human element. Like that's actually the point.
Right.
Thank you for sharing this with the people of the Growing Show and with me. It was one of those things where, knowing you, I thought, this can't just be something that I get to enjoy. And that is the show. As usual, I am Isabel.
I'm Katie.
And we may not know much.
This has been The Growing Show. Love you.
Okay, love you too. I'll talk to you later.
All right, bye.